It was almost 2:01 a.m. Oscar, exhausted from the party, sat down on the couch to rest for a few minutes, intending to leave soon after. The loud music echoed throughout Jeff's house, his longtime friend. But Oscar barely paid attention to it. At 39, he preferred to be at home watching a movie or reading something about construction. Working as a contractor from Monday to Saturday left little energy for parties that went on until the early hours. His tired eyes scanned the crowded room. Couples danced in an area turned into a makeshift dance floor, while others chatted in groups scattered around. The smell of beer and mixed perfumes hung in the warm air of the night. He didn't usually attend this kind of event, but Jeff insisted so much that he eventually gave in. That's when he saw Sandra, Jeff's wife, navigating through the crowd towards him. She was wearing heels that were too high for her own good, carefully walking around the empty bottles on the floor. But it wasn't Sandra who caught Oscar's attention. Beside her walked a woman who seemed out of place in that chaotic environment. Brown hair fell naturally over her shoulders, framing a face with delicate features. She wore a simple black dress, nothing extravagant, yet it highlighted her understated elegance. Oscar straightened up on the couch, feeling an inexplicable curiosity take over him. For the first time that endless night, something had genuinely captured his attention. "Oscar, I want to introduce you to someone very special," Sandra said with a mischievous smile. "This is Annette, my cousin who just moved to Austin." Annette extended her hand gracefully, her slim, soft fingers meeting Oscar's. He immediately noticed her expressive green eyes and couldn't help but linger on them a bit too long. There was something in her green eyes that contrasted with her shy smile. "Nice to meet you," she said, her voice surprisingly clear despite the deafening noise around. "The pleasure's all mine," replied Oscar, realizing he held her hand a few seconds longer than appropriate. Sandra left them alone with the excuse of fetching more drinks. Oscar invited Annette to sit next to him on the couch. "You don't seem to be much of a fan of parties," she observed, crossing her legs elegantly. "I have to admit I'm not. What about you?" "Same here. Sandra dragged me here saying I needed to meet new people and get out of my shell. Apparently staying in with Netflix and popcorn doesn't count as a social life." Annette smiled shyly. "Well, at least you have Netflix." "I don't even have it properly set up on my TV," Oscar confessed, drawing another smile from her. "Seriously, you must be the only person in the United States without a streaming account. I work a lot. I get home dead tired, take a shower, grab whatever I find in the fridge to eat, and collapse on the couch." Annette studied his face with interest. "What kind of work leaves you like that?" "Construction. I'm a contractor and run a small company. It's nothing grand, but it pays the bills and allows me to be my own boss." "That must be rewarding. Creating things with your own hands, seeing the result of your effort take shape." Oscar was surprised by her response. Most women he knew turned up their noses when they found out what he did, as if working with his hands were something inferior. "Exactly, that's it. Every project is unique, every challenge different." He brightened up, realizing she really understood. "And you? What do you do, besides having TV habits?" "I work as a receptionist at a medical clinic. It's not my dream job, but it has flexible hours, which is essential when you have kids." The word kids hung in the air between them. Oscar saw a shadow cross Annette's face, as if she had revealed more than she intended. "How many kids do you have?" he asked gently. "Two. Sophia is 9, and Caleb is 6. Her voice filled with affection as she talked about them. "They're my whole world." "And their dad?" Annette looked away, nervously fiddling with her purse strap. "Let's just say he decided being a father was more responsibility than he was willing to take on, especially when he found out we'd have a second child." "I'm sorry, it must be tough raising 2 kids alone," Oscar said with genuine concern. "It's challenging, but they're worth every sacrifice. Sophia is super smart, gets excellent grades in school. Caleb is pure energy, always coming up with some crazy game." Her face lit up completely as she described the kids. Oscar felt something stir inside his chest. He'd always dreamed of having a family, but nearing 40, he still hadn't found the right person. "What about you? Do you have kids?" Annette asked. "No, but I love kids. I've always wanted to be a dad." Oscar smiled slightly, looking down at the floor as if he felt sorry for himself. "But they must be amazing if they're anything like their mom," he said, surprising himself with his boldness. Annette blushed slightly. You're very kind. Most men run away when they find out I have baggage. Baggage? Oscar shook his head. Two kids aren't baggage. They're blessings. Any guy who can't see that doesn't deserve you or them. Do you really think so? Absolutely. It doesn't matter if the kids are my blood or not. Love is love. Family is family. At that moment, with the loud music pulsing around them and dozens of drunken people passing through the room, Oscar and Annette found a connection that transcended the chaos of the party. It was as if they had created an invisible bubble where only the two of them existed, and the possibility of something special beginning to blossom. They talked for over an hour that early morning, and when the party finally ended, Oscar offered Annette a ride home. During the drive to her apartment, they talked about dreams, future plans, and past struggles. I'd like to meet Caleb and Sophia someday, he said, stopping in front of the simple building where she lived. They'd really like you, she replied, genuinely smiling for the first time that night. In the following months, Oscar and Annette began seeing each other regularly. He would take her out to dinner at fancy and sophisticated restaurants. On weekends, they went out with the kids to parks, ice cream parlors, or movie theaters. Caleb and Sophia quickly grew fond of Oscar. He had infinite patience with them, played ball with Caleb in the backyard, and helped Sophia color princess drawings. The kids started calling him Uncle Oscar affectionately. Mom, is Uncle Oscar going to live with us? Sophia asked one afternoon while they were having ice cream in the square. Annette blushed slightly. Why do you ask, sweetheart? Because he's nice and takes care of us. Oscar felt his heart warm. At that moment, he realized he was completely in love not only with Annette, but with the idea of forming a family with her and the kids. It was the beginning of a family he hadn't even known he was looking for. 6 months passed since that first meeting at the park. Oscar and Annette developed a comfortable routine. Weeknight dinners, weekend outings, and movie nights at her place while the kids slept. Sophia had lost her initial shyness and now bombarded him with questions about construction, architecture, and how houses don't fall down. Caleb followed him like a shadow whenever possible, imitating his gestures and calling him my best friend Oscar. One Thursday night, while helping Caleb with his math homework at the small kitchen table in Annette's apartment, Oscar looked around the cramped space. The apartment was clean and well kept, but clearly inadequate for a family of 3. Sophia and Caleb shared a tiny room with barely enough space for 2 twin beds and a small wardrobe. Mom, I can't find my science book, Sophia complained, rummaging through piles of school materials stacked on the dresser. It's probably under Caleb's bed again, Annette sighed, drying her hands on a towel after washing dishes in the tiny sink. It's not. I didn't take it, Caleb protested, not lifting his eyes from the numbers he was trying to solve. Oscar watched the familiar scene. 3 people he cared about, squeezed into a space barely meeting their basic needs. He made a decision that had been forming for weeks. Annette, can I talk to you for a minute? She came over, sitting in the chair next to him. Sure, is something wrong? Actually, I have a proposal. Oscar took a deep breath. How about you 3 come live with me? Annette blinked, clearly not expecting that. Oscar, are you serious? Completely serious. My house has 3 bedrooms, a big backyard, and it's empty during the day. Sophia and Caleb would have their own space, and you wouldn't have to squeeze in here anymore. But we've only been dating for 6 months, and they've been the best 6 months of my life. Oscar took her hand. I'm not proposing marriage yet. I'm offering a better home for you. No pressure, no commitments beyond what we already have. Sophia, who had stopped searching for her book to listen, came over timidly. Uncle Oscar, is your house really that big? Very big, Sophia. There's a room just for you with a window overlooking the garden, and another room for Caleb where he can put all his toys without getting in anyone's way. Caleb's eyes lit up. And can I play ball in the backyard? Every day if you want. Annette looked at her children, then at Oscar. Are you sure about this? 2 kids make a lot of noise, a lot of mess. Annette, this apartment isn't big enough for you to grow. Sophia needs a place to study properly. Caleb needs space to burn off energy, and you deserve a kitchen where you don't bump into the fridge. Mom, can we go? Sophia asked hopefully. Please, Mom, Caleb pleaded, putting down his pencil entirely. Annette was silent for a long moment, clearly struggling with the decision. What if it doesn't work out? What if you get tired of us? That won't happen, but if you ever feel uncomfortable, you can come back whenever you want. No contracts, no obligations. Would you really do this for us? I'd do anything for the three of you. All right, she said. Let's give it a try. The move happened the following weekend. Oscar rented a van to transport their belongings, which easily fit in a single trip. He insisted that Sophia and Caleb choose how they wanted to decorate their new rooms. This room is really just mine? Sophia asked, spinning in the middle of the space that was 3 times bigger than the corner she shared with her brother. All yours. We can paint it any color you want. Buy new furniture, whatever you prefer. Can I have a desk to do homework? Of course you can. Caleb was ecstatic about his new room, running from corner to corner as if measuring his new space. I can fit so many toy cars here. And a bigger twin bed and a chest to store your toys, Oscar added. That first night in the new house after the kids fell asleep in their own beds, in their own rooms, Oscar and Annette sat on the couch with a glass of wine. Thank you, she said simply. For what? For giving us a chance to be a real family, for not making me feel like a burden. Oscar pulled her closer. You're not a burden. You're the best gift I've ever received. In the following months, the house filled with life. Sophia spread her books across the dining table while doing her homework. Caleb left toys everywhere and ran around the backyard with boundless energy. Annette turned the kitchen into a cozy place, always filled with the smell of something delicious baking in the oven. Oscar had never felt so complete. He came home from work eager to see the faces of the 3 people he loved most. He helped with homework, took the kids to school when Annette needed to leave early for work, and attended school meetings as if he were their biological father. Uncle Oscar, are you going to the school performance on Friday? Sophia asked one night during dinner. Of course I am. I wouldn't miss your performance for anything. And you, Mom? I'll be there too, sweetheart. Caleb clapped his hands. We're going to be the only family with 2 grown-ups at the show. Oscar and Annette exchanged a loving glance. They really seemed like a perfect family. But somewhere in that perfect rhythm of life, the feelings from one of them got lost or simply ended. It was during one of those quiet nights, about a year after the move, that Oscar noticed the first changes in Annette's behavior. She began spending more time on her phone, smiling at messages that came during dinner. Who's texting? He asked casually. Oh, it's Sandra. She's telling me about her new job, Annette replied without looking up from the screen. But Oscar noticed how she held the phone protectively, as if she were hiding something. It was a subtle gesture, but after more than a year living together, he knew her habits well. In the weeks that followed, Annette's nights out became more frequent. I need to meet Sandra, or the girls from work scheduled a happy hour, were the explanations she gave. Oscar never questioned it. He trusted her completely and thought it was natural for her to want to keep her social life active, with some fun time just for her and her friends. What he didn't realize was that, during some of these outings, Annette was planting poisonous seeds in the minds of the children he loved so much. The first time Oscar noticed something strange was on an ordinary Tuesday. He came home after a long day supervising a renovation downtown, eager to have dinner with his family. He found Sophia doing homework at the kitchen table and Caleb watching cartoons in the living room. Hey guys, how was school today? He asked as he did every day. Sophia barely looked up from her notebook. It was normal. Caleb didn't even turn to greet him, keeping his eyes glued to the television. Oscar felt a strange pang in his chest. Normally, the kids would run to hug him when he arrived, telling 1,000 stories about their day. But maybe they were just tired. Where's your mom? He asked, washing his hands at the sink. She went out, Sophia replied flatly. Out where? I don't know. She said she'd be back late. Oscar opened the fridge, looking for ingredients to prepare dinner. In the first few months living together, Annette always left something ready or at least prepared for him to heat up. Lately, though, he had been taking on more household responsibilities. During dinner, he tried to talk to the kids as he always did, but their responses were monosyllabic. Sophia pushed her food around her plate without much appetite. Caleb ate in silence, something completely unusual for a boy who used to chatter through every meal. Did anything happen at school today? Oscar insisted. No, they replied almost in unison. After dinner, when he went to put Caleb to bed, the boy lightly pushed him away when he attempted the usual goodnight kiss. You don't need to stay here. I know how to sleep alone, Caleb murmured, turning toward the wall. Oscar stood in the doorway, confused. All right, champ, but if you need anything, just call me. There was no response. Sophia also declined the usual bedtime reading routine. I'm tired. Good night, she said, closing the door in his face. Oscar went down to the living room, turned on the TV, but couldn't concentrate on anything. The kids' behavior was completely unprecedented. In over a year of living together, they had never treated him with such coldness. Annette came home after midnight. Oscar was still awake, flipping through an architecture magazine on the couch. How was your day? He asked when she entered the room. Long, I'm exhausted. She headed straight for the stairs, avoiding eye contact. The kids were acting strange today. Did something happen? Annette stopped on the first step. What kind of thing? I don't know. They barely talked to me and didn't want me to put them to bed. Sophia didn't even want me to read to her. Maybe they're just growing up, Oscar. Kids change. But it was so sudden, he replied. You're overreacting. They adore you. Annette quickly went up the stairs, ending the conversation. In the following days, the pattern repeated. The kids maintained a cold courtesy with Oscar, greeting him when necessary, but all the spontaneity and affection had vanished. It was as if an invisible wall had been erected between them. One Friday morning, Oscar woke up early to make breakfast. Pancakes, Caleb's favorite. When the boy came down to the kitchen, his eyes lit up for a moment at the sight of the steaming pancakes on the table. Your favorite, Oscar said, smiling. Caleb hesitated, clearly tempted, but then his face shut down again. I'm not hungry. But you love pancakes. I said I'm not hungry. The boy stomped out of the kitchen. Oscar heard his footsteps running up the stairs. Sophia appeared a few minutes later, already dressed for school. She grabbed an apple from the fruit bowl and headed for the door. Aren't you going to have breakfast? Oscar asked. I don't have time. I'll be late. I can drive you. No need. I'd rather walk. She left without saying goodbye. Oscar stood alone in the kitchen, looking at the table set for three with only one chair occupied. The pancakes cooled on the plate, untouched. That afternoon, he decided to pick up the kids from school as a surprise. Normally, Annette did, but he wanted to try to reconnect with them somehow. He waited at the gate with other parents, watching the children leaving in animated groups. He saw Sophia first, chatting with a friend. When she noticed him, her expression changed immediately. What are you doing here? She asked, approaching slowly. I came to pick you up. I thought we could get some ice cream on the way home. Mom doesn't know about this. I'll call her now and let her know. Caleb appeared running, as he always did when he saw Oscar, but he stopped abruptly a few feet away, remembering something. Where's Mom? He asked suspiciously. She's working. I'm here to pick you up today. I don't want to go with you, Caleb said, crossing his arms. Oscar felt like he'd just been punched in the stomach. Why not, champ? Because I don't want to. Caleb, what's going on? Did I do something wrong? The boy looked at Sophia, who shook her head almost imperceptibly. We're walking home, she said, taking her brother's hand. But it's too far for you to walk alone. We can do it, Sophia interrupted. Come on, Caleb. Oscar stood at the school gate, watching the two children he considered his own deliberately move away from him. Other parents passed by, some greeting him, others just following their usual routines. He was absolutely sure he hadn't done anything to deserve this treatment. The changes had begun too suddenly, too coordinated. It was as if someone had programmed the kids to reject him. That night, during the usual silent dinner, Oscar decided to try a different approach. You know, I was thinking about renovating the backyard, putting in a new swing set, maybe a treehouse for you. Caleb looked up, interested for a moment, but Sophia gave him a stern look. No need, she said coldly. We're not going to be here forever anyway. The words hit Oscar like a bullet. What do you mean you're not going to be here forever? Nothing. Forget it. Sophia, please, tell me what's going on. You used to be my best friends, and now we can barely talk. The girl stared at him with an expression that seemed too mature for her 10 years. You're not our real dad. You don't have to pretend you care. I'm not pretending anything. I love you. That's what all men say, she replied, repeating words that were clearly not her own. Until they get tired and throw us away. Oscar felt the world spin around him. He recognized those words, that tone. They weren't the thoughts of a 10-year-old. Who told you that? Sophia realized she had said too much. She quickly got up from the table. No one. I'm going to do my homework. Caleb followed her like a shadow, leaving Oscar alone at the dining table he had imagined would be the center of a happy family. For the first time in over a year, Oscar began to question if he truly knew the woman he had fallen in love with. The following weeks brought a gradual escalation of tension. Annette started going out almost every night, always with vague excuses about important commitments or meetings with friends. When Oscar tried to talk about the children's strange behavior, she would deflect or accuse him of being paranoid. They're just kids, Oscar. They go through phases, she would say, without looking up from her phone that constantly buzzed with messages. One Thursday night, Oscar was helping Caleb with a drawing when he heard fragments of a phone conversation coming from the bedroom. Annette was speaking softly, but he caught a few words. Lawyer, rights, property. His blood ran cold. He climbed the stairs slowly, trying to listen better, but the conversation had ended by the time he reached the hallway. Who were you talking to? He asked when Annette came out of the room. Sandra, her family issues, she replied quickly, passing him on her way to the bathroom. Oscar knew she was lying. Sandra never called so late and certainly wouldn't discuss legal matters with Annette. The next day, everything changed dramatically and definitively. Oscar came home at 6 in the evening and found the house eerily silent. Normally, this was the noisiest time of the day. Caleb playing in the backyard, Sophia doing homework at the kitchen table, Annette preparing dinner. Hey, everyone, I'm home, he shouted, but there was no response. He went upstairs checking the rooms. Sophia's room was empty, as was Caleb's. When he opened the door to the room he shared with Annette, he found the dresser drawers open and empty. Her closet was completely cleared out. His feet felt like lead as he rushed downstairs. On the kitchen table, he found a note written in Annette's neat handwriting. Oscar, I can't keep pretending we're a family. You are a good man, but I need to protect my children. We're leaving. Please don't try to find us. Annette. Oscar read the note 3 times, trying to process the words. Pretending? What did she mean, pretending? For 2 years, he had given unconditional love to that family, had opened his home, his heart, his life. He immediately called Annette's cell. Voicemail. He tried 10 more times. Always voicemail. He called the clinic where she worked. Annette resigned last week, the receptionist informed him. Said she was moving to another state. Oscar sat on the living room sofa, still holding the note. The house that had filled with children's laughter and dinner conversations was now plunged into haunting silence. He spent the entire weekend waiting for her to return, to call, to provide some more detailed explanation. He prepared the kids' favorite meals, leaving the plates on the table in case they showed up hungry. On Monday morning, as he mechanically got ready for work, the doorbell rang. Oscar rushed to the door, hoping to find Annette and the kids on the other side. Instead, he found a man in a gray suit holding a briefcase. Mr. Oscar Cunningham? Yes, that's me. My name is Timothy Thompson. I'm a lawyer. I represent Miss Annette O'Neill. I have a summons for you. Oscar took the envelope with trembling hands. A summons for what? Ms. O'Neill is claiming rights to this property based on having lived here as a partner in a common law marriage for more than 2 years. There's also a request for child support for her and the minor children. The words hit Oscar like consecutive punches. What do you mean rights to the property? This house is mine. Sir, I advise you to seek legal counsel as soon as possible. The hearing is scheduled for Monday next week. The man handed over more papers. Everything is specified here. Oscar closed the door and leaned against it, feeling his legs weak. He opened the envelope with trembling fingers and read the official document. Annette was claiming that they had lived as husband and wife for 2 years, that she had contributed to the upkeep of the house with domestic work and family care, and therefore was entitled to half the property. Additionally, she was requesting substantial monthly support for her and the children. The most painful part of the document was Annette's description of their relationship. The respondent took advantage of the petitioner's vulnerable situation, a single mother with two small children, promising family stability only to satisfy his own domestic and emotional needs. Oscar had to read that part several times to believe these words were about him, about the man who had loved that family unconditionally. In the following days, the reality of the situation became clear. Annette had planned everything meticulously. Her frequent outings in recent weeks were meetings with lawyers. The whispered phone conversations were legal strategies being discussed. Even more devastating was realizing that the children had been used as pieces in a game he didn't even know was being played. The sudden changes in behavior, the inexplicable coldness, the adult phrases Sophia repeated, all had been carefully orchestrated to build a case against him. Oscar hired a lawyer, Andrew Chen, who got straight to the point after analyzing the documents. "The situation is complicated," Chen said in his elegant office in downtown Austin. "Texas recognizes common law marriage under certain circumstances. If she can prove you lived as husband and wife, sharing domestic and financial responsibilities, and presenting as a couple to the community, she may be entitled to part of the property." "But I never promised anything. We never talked about marriage or dividing assets." Unfortunately, Texas common law marriage doesn't require formal contracts. Behavior, cohabitation, and presenting as a couple can be enough to establish a common law marriage. Oscar left the lawyer's office feeling like he was sinking into quicksand. In 1 week, he discovered that the woman he loved had been lying from the beginning, that the children he considered his own had been taught to reject him, and that he could now lose the house he had worked his entire life for. That night, sitting alone in the living room, where he had often felt like the luckiest man in the world, Oscar finally understood the extent of the betrayal he had suffered. It wasn't just his heart that had been broken. His entire life had been carefully dismantled by someone he trusted blindly. The hearing was approaching, along with the very real possibility of losing everything. Monday morning dawned gray over Austin. Oscar put on his only suit, the same one he wore to his brother's wedding 3 years before, and drove to the courthouse with his hands sweating on the steering wheel. His lawyer, Andrew Chen, met him on the steps of the building with an expression that did not convey confidence. "How are things looking?" Oscar asked, nervously adjusting his tie. "Complicated. Her lawyer brought photos of you at family events, joint purchase receipts, even statements from neighbors confirming you presented as a married couple." "Is that enough?" "In Texas, it could be. Let's hope the judge is discerning." Inside the courtroom, Oscar saw Annette for the first time since she had disappeared. She was sitting next to her lawyer, wearing a sober and discreet outfit, her hair conservatively tied back. When she saw him, she immediately looked away. What hurt the most were the empty chairs beside her. Sophia and Caleb weren't present, but Oscar knew they were probably being cared for by Sandra somewhere in the city, completely unaware that their futures were being decided in that room. Judge Harrison, a man around 60 with reading glasses, called the case. Annette's lawyer presented first, painting a convincing picture of a vulnerable woman who had been seduced by promises of family security. "Your Honor, my client dedicated 2 years of her life to building a home with the defendant. She cared for the house, educated the children, participated in community events as his wife. When he grew tired of the responsibility, he simply discarded her." Oscar clenched his fists, hearing his version of the story distorted beyond recognition. Then it was Andrew Chen's turn to defend. "Your Honor, there is no evidence of a common law marriage here. My client offered housing out of generosity, not a marital contract. The petitioner never changed her last name. They never declared a union in official documents." The hearing dragged on for 2 tense hours. Annette was called to testify and, with convincing tears in her eyes, described how Oscar had promised to be a father to her children, and how she had sacrificed career opportunities to dedicate herself to the home. When Oscar was called to testify, his words felt weak even to himself. How could he explain that the love he felt was real, but there was never an intention of formal marriage? How could he prove he had been manipulated when all the evidence suggested otherwise? The crucial moment came when the judge asked about the ownership of the house. "Mr. Cunningham, is this house registered in your name?" Oscar hesitated, knowing his answer could determine everything. "No, Your Honor, it's in my brother's name, Mark Cunningham." A murmur went through the room. Annette's lawyer looked surprised for the first time that day. And why isn't it in your name if you consider it your residence? I bought the house from my brother, but we hadn't officially transferred the deed yet. Bureaucratic issues, paperwork. We plan to resolve it this year. The judge raised his eyebrows. So technically, the property belongs to Mr. Mark Cunningham? Yes, sir. Andrew Chen immediately requested a recess in the hearing. Across the room, Annette's attorney was whispering furiously in her ear, clearly reformulating their entire strategy. When the hearing resumed, the legal reality was indisputable. Annette could not claim rights to a property that did not legally belong to the man she had cohabitated with. Judge Harrison delivered his decision with a firm voice. This court cannot grant property rights over an asset that does not belong to the defendant. However, considering the period of cohabitation and the responsibilities assumed by the defendant regarding the minors, I order the payment of alimony in the amount of $1,200 monthly for a period of 12 months. Oscar felt relief and despair simultaneously. He would keep the house, but would pay a substantial amount to the woman who had destroyed his life. When they left the courthouse, Annette looked at him for the first time in weeks. You got lucky, she said coldly, but I hope it's worth it living alone in that big house. Why, Annette? He asked, genuinely confused. Why did you do all this? She looked at him as if the question were absurd. Because I could. Because love is over. But what about me? I loved you all. You'll survive, she said. Turning her back on him, she walked away toward a car, where Oscar could see the small silhouettes of Sophia and Caleb in the back seat. For a moment, he thought one of the children had looked in his direction, but the car drove off before he could be sure. Oscar stood on the sidewalk in front of the courthouse, watching disappear not only the woman he had loved, but also the two children he had considered his own. For the first time in months, he was truly alone. But he still had his house. It was a bitter victory, but it was a victory. That same afternoon, Oscar drove straight to his brother Mark's house in suburban Austin. He needed to thank the man who, unknowingly, had saved his financial life. Mark opened the door still wearing work clothes, a wrinkled dress shirt and loosened tie. As a successful real estate broker, he always seemed busy, but his face lit up when he saw his brother. Oscar, how did the hearing go? You look relieved? Can I come in? I need to tell you everything. Sitting in Mark's comfortable living room, with his wife Linda serving tea, Oscar recounted the events of the past months. He told them about the changes in Annette and the children's behavior, the sudden disappearance, the court summons, and finally that morning's hearing. Wait a minute, Mark interrupted when Oscar reached the crucial part. You mean the deed not being in your name was what saved you? Exactly. The judge couldn't grant rights to a property that technically belongs to you. Oscar, do you realize what could have happened if we had transferred the deed as planned last month? Oscar felt a chill down his spine. They really had planned to finalize the paperwork a few weeks earlier, but Mark had been traveling for work, so they postponed. You would have lost half the house, Mark continued. Maybe more, depending on how the judge interpreted the situation with the kids. Linda, who had listened in silence, shook her head sadly. Oscar, I'm so sorry for what you've been through. When you all came for Christmas, she seemed so normal, so devoted to the kids and you. She was devoted to the kids, Oscar admitted, just not in the way I thought. She was using them as tools to get what she wanted. What are you going to do now? Mark asked. Pay the support for a year and try to rebuild my life. At least I have the house. Mark was thoughtful for a moment. Oscar, about the deed. Do you still want me to transfer it to your name? The question caught Oscar off guard. For years, he had considered that house truly his. He had painted every wall, fixed every leaky faucet, and planted flowers in the garden. But now, honestly, I don't know. After what happened, the idea of owning property in my name scares me. I understand, but you can't live in fear forever. Not every woman is like Annette. How can I be sure? She completely fooled me for 2 years. I really believed we were a happy family. Linda leaned forward, gently touching Oscar's arm. Honey, you can't give up on love because of one bad person. Annette took advantage of your kindness, but that doesn't make your kindness a weakness. It feels like it is. It's not, Mark said firmly. You opened your home to a woman and two kids in need. You were a better father to Sophia and Caleb in 2 years than their biological father probably was in their entire lives. That's not weakness, that's character. In the following days, Oscar returned to his work routine, trying to fill the empty hours with projects and responsibilities. The house that once pulsed with family life now echoed with his solitary steps. Every morning he made coffee for one. Every night he ate dinner in silence, watching the news. Sophia and Caleb's rooms remained closed. He couldn't enter them without feeling a physical pain in his chest. 2 weeks after the hearing, he received an unexpected call. "Hello? Uncle Oscar?" The small, hesitant voice on the other end made his heart stop. "Sophia? Sophia, is that you?" "Yes," she was whispering, clearly trying not to be heard. "Are you okay?" Oscar had to sit down. "I'm fine, sweetheart. And you, how's Caleb?" "We're living with Sandra and Jeff now. Mom said you didn't want us anymore." The words hit Oscar like a bullet. "Sophia, that's not true. I would never, ever stop wanting you both." "You are—" "I have to hang up," she whispered quickly. "Mom is coming. I just wanted to know if you were okay." The line went dead. Oscar held the phone for several minutes, tears streaming down his face. Sophia had called in secret to see if he was okay. That meant despite all the manipulation, there was still love between them. But it also meant Annette was still lying to the children, making them believe he had abandoned them. That night, Oscar made a decision. He called Mark. "I want to transfer the house deed to my name," he said. "Are you sure? I thought you were afraid." "I am, but I can't live in fear forever." "I understand. We'll take care of it next week." Oscar hung up the phone and looked around the empty room. The house had almost been lost because of love. Now it would officially be his because of the same love. A love that persisted even after everything that had happened. He had won the legal battle, but the emotional war was far from over. At least now he knew that whatever happened, he still had his house. And maybe one day, he would also have a real family to fill that space again. The following months were the hardest of Oscar's life. Waking up alone, working during the day, trying not to think about the past, and coming home to an empty house every night created a routine that seemed to drain his life energy. The monthly payment of $1,200 to Annette was a constant reminder of the price he paid for having trusted blindly. Each bank transfer hurt like a punch to the stomach, not because of the money itself, but because of what it represented. 3 months after the hearing, Oscar was fixing a kitchen faucet when the phone rang. He hesitated before answering. Unexpected calls still made him nervous. "Hello? Uncle Oscar?" The voice was deeper than last time, but he recognized it immediately. "Caleb? My boy, how did you get my number?" "I borrowed cousin Sandra's phone when she wasn't looking." He was whispering, just like Sophia had done months before. "Did you really disappear? Mom said you don't like us anymore." Oscar closed his eyes, feeling the familiar pang of anger and sadness. "Caleb, listen carefully to what I'm going to tell you. I never stopped caring about you both. Never." "Then why don't you come get us?" The innocent question broke Oscar's heart. How could he explain to a 7-year-old about manipulation, legal proceedings, and adults who use children as weapons? "It's complicated, champ. Your mom doesn't want you to live with me." "But we want to." Sophia cries at night sometimes. She said she misses your big room and the books you used to read to her. Oscar had to lean against the kitchen sink. "Caleb, do you still live with cousin Sandra?" "No. We moved to a small apartment again. There's noise all the time, and I can't play ball." "And how are you doing? Are you okay at school?" "I am, but Sophia got in a fight with a boy last week because he said she didn't have a dad." Oscar clenched his fists. "What did she say?" "That she did have one, that his name was Oscar, and that he was the best dad in the world." Then the boy laughed and she hit him. The tears came without warning. Oscar had to sit down in the kitchen chair, overwhelmed by emotion. "Uncle Oscar, are you still there?" "I'm here, yes." "Mom is coming. I have to hang up. But, do you still live in our house?" "Yes, Caleb, I still live here. And your rooms are still just the way you left them." "Really? Are my cars still there?" All of them. Nobody touched anything. I have to go. I love you, Uncle Oscar. The line went dead before Oscar could respond. He climbed the stairs slowly and, for the first time in months, opened the door to Caleb's room. Everything was exactly as the boy had left it. Cars scattered across the floor, drawings taped to the wall, the small bed with Spider-Man sheets. In Sophia's room, the books were still stacked on the study desk. Her pink diary remained on the dresser, next to a photo she had taken with him at the zoo. Oscar sat on her bed and picked up the photo. Sophia was beaming, while he was making a funny face for the camera. It had been a perfect day, just him and the children, exploring the zoo while Annette worked. Back then, he thought he was lucky to have a girlfriend who trusted him alone with her children. Now he realized that Annette simply took advantage of any opportunity to have free time. In the following months, the children's calls became more frequent, always hidden, always brief. Oscar discovered that Annette had gotten a job at a department store and was dating a man named Rick, who didn't really like children. He yells at us if we make noise, Sophia told him during one of the calls. He says he's not our dad and doesn't have to put up with brats. And your mother? What does she do when he yells? She tells us to go to our room and be quiet. Oscar felt a mixture of anger and bitter satisfaction. Annette had traded a man who loved her daughters for one who treated them like a burden. The poetic justice didn't diminish his concern for the children. During the 8th month of alimony payments, Oscar received a call from Andrew Chen. Oscar, I have news about your case. What kind of news? Annette got married, officially, to someone named Rick Thompson 2 weeks ago. Oscar remained silent, processing the information. That means technically she no longer needs the alimony. She has a husband to support her now. And the children, they're still her responsibility, but if she has a new provider, you can request to stop the payments. No, Oscar said immediately. What do you mean no? Oscar, that's $1,200 a month. I don't want to stop paying. It's the only connection I have with Sophia and Caleb. If I stop sending money, Annette might completely prevent them from contacting me. Andrew sighed on the other end of the line. You know this is emotional blackmail, right? I know, but it's worth it. The last payment happened exactly 1 year after the hearing. Oscar made the transfer and curiously felt lighter. He had fulfilled his legal obligation. Now any future relationship with the children would depend only on their own will when they became adults. That night, alone in the house he had almost lost, Oscar reflected on the price he had paid for trusting without limits. $14,400 in money, but much more in disillusionment and emotional scars. He had learned that unconditional love, when not reciprocated in the same way, can become a weapon against the one who loves. But still, he didn't regret having loved Sophia and Caleb. They had been the best part of that entire terrible story, and someday, maybe they would understand that too. 2 years had passed since the last alimony payment. Oscar had found a routine that worked. Work during the day, gym 3 times a week, some casual dates that never evolved into anything serious. He had built solid emotional walls around his heart. The house remained the same, but now Oscar could enter the children's rooms without feeling the pain from before. He had even started using Sophia's room as an improvised office. On a Saturday afternoon, while trimming the backyard grass, he heard the doorbell ring. He wasn't expecting anyone. He rarely received visitors on weekends. When he opened the door, he could hardly believe what he saw. Sophia was standing on the porch. Now 14 years old, she had grown considerably. Her brown hair was longer, pulled back in a side braid. "Hi, Uncle Oscar," she said shyly. For a moment, Oscar couldn't speak. He just stared at the girl he had considered his daughter, trying to process that she was really there. "Sophia, how did you—" "I took 2 buses to get here. I remembered the address." "Does your mother know where you are?" Sophia shook her head. "I told her I was going to a friend's house." Oscar looked behind her, checking if there was anyone else. "And Caleb? He's good at soccer. He doesn't know I came here." She hesitated. "Can I come in? Just for a few minutes?" Oscar stepped away from the door, still surprised. Sophia entered slowly, looking around the living room as if she were revisiting an old memory. "Everything's the same," she murmured. "I didn't change much." They sat on the couch, an awkward silence hanging between them. Oscar didn't know how to start a conversation with someone who had been so close to him, but who was now practically a stranger. Why did you come here, Sophia? She took a deep breath before answering. Because I need to know the truth. My mom always said you abandoned us, that you got tired of us. But I remember how you were with us. Did you really abandon us? Oscar felt his heart tighten. Never, Sophia. I never abandoned you. Your mother left the house with you both and took me to court. Took you to court for what? She wanted to keep the house. She said she had a right to it because we lived together for 2 years. Sophia frowned, processing the information. And did she get it? No. The house wasn't in my name at the time, so the judge couldn't give it to her. But I had to pay alimony for a year. Alimony for who? For you two, to make sure you had food and clothes. Sophia was silent for a long moment. My mom never told us that. She only said you didn't want to be our dad anymore. Sophia, look into my eyes. Oscar leaned forward. I never stopped loving you both. You were the best things that ever happened in my life. Tears began streaming down her face. I knew it. I always knew she was lying. The way you looked at us. How you cared. Rick is horrible to us. He yells about everything. Says we're a burden. My mom doesn't do anything to defend us. Oscar clenched his fists, but kept his voice calm. I'm sorry you're going through that. Can I see my room? She asked suddenly. Of course. They went upstairs together. When Oscar opened the door to what had been Sophia's room, she let out a gasp of surprise. You kept everything? Every book, every drawing on the wall. I couldn't bring myself to change anything. Sophia entered slowly, touching the desk where she used to do homework, picking up some of the books he used to read to her before bedtime. Do you still have that photo of us from the zoo? Oscar took the photo from the dresser and handed it to her. It's always stayed right here. Sophia held the photo carefully. It was the best day of my life. I remember every detail. Mine too. She turned to face him. Uncle Oscar, can I ask you a difficult question? Of course. If we could go back in time, would you do everything differently? Would you not have brought us to live here? The question caught Oscar off guard. He thought about everything he had lost. The money, his peace of mind, his ability to fully trust someone again. No, he said finally. I would do everything exactly the same. Because having you two in my life, even if it was for a short time, was worth every second of pain that came after. Sophia began crying openly. I miss you so much. And Caleb does too, even though he won't admit it. Oscar hugged her, feeling how much she had grown, but still recognizing the little girl he used to carry on his shoulders. I miss you both so much too. After a few minutes, Sophia pulled away. I need to go. Do you want me to drive you back? No, it's better if I go back alone. At the front door, Sophia turned one last time. Uncle Oscar? Yes? When I turn 18, can I come back here? To talk, I don't know, to be part of your life again? Oscar felt his throat tighten. You can come back whenever you want, Sophia. This house will always be your home too. She smiled, the same smile that used to light up the dining room during those family dinners 3 years before. Thank you for everything, for being the best father I ever had, even though you weren't really my father. Oscar stood on the porch watching her walk away down the street until she disappeared around the corner. When he went back inside the house, it no longer felt empty. It felt full of future possibilities. That night, Oscar reflected on everything he had learned. Not everyone we love loves us back the same way. Not all generosity is rewarded with gratitude. Sometimes trusting can cost us everything we have. But he also learned that true love always finds a way back, that children can see through adults' lies when they grow up enough, and that some scars, no matter how painful, make us better and wiser people. Oscar didn't know if he would ever love someone again the way he loved Annette. Probably not. But he knew that when Sophia and Caleb came back, and he was certain they would, he would be here waiting with the same house, the same unconditional love, and perhaps a little more wisdom about the dangers and rewards of opening your heart completely. Some stories don't have traditional happy endings, But sometimes having hope for a future reunion is enough to make all the pain bearable. And Oscar had that hope.